Good morning, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to Sunday service. A special welcome to those of you who are visiting for the first time and those of you who've joined us from the surrounding area, and also to our online guests. So my name is Nayaswami Anandi. This is Nayaswami Bharat, and we're very happy to be with you today. This morning's reading from Rays of the One Light, which are weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Ananda, I found this an especially touching and beautiful reading. It's called Truth Invites, It Never Commands. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Free will is a basic principle of life. God never coerces. He invites us to live in such a way that we find fulfillment in ourselves. If we refuse to live rightly, Paramahansa Yogananda taught, God simply says, I will wait. We have eternity to live. In that eternity, we live as we choose, in self-created darkness, a darkness as intense and as long-lasting as we choose, or in the infinite light, the true self, which is God. Jesus Christ in the Beatitudes offered a beautiful example of God's way of inviting mankind to seek perfection, not by commanding, but by offering his human children the incentive they need to choose the right of their own volition. Blessed are the poor in spirit, Jesus said, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. In each of the Beatitudes, Jesus explains the blessing attendant upon observing it. The divine way, similarly, for each of us, is not to do violence to our own natures. Spirituality must be attained naturally. It can never be attained by force. The Bhagavad Gita says in the 3rd chapter, even the wise behave in accordance with nature as it is manifested in them. Of what avail then is suppression? The scripture then goes on, however, to explain that this doesn't mean we should surrender to the dictates of our lower nature. Rather, it emphasizes our need to aspire to the heights, but each of us in accordance with his own nature and not in imitation of anyone else's, offering ourselves up for purification by divine grace. Desire, whatever form it takes, so the Bhagavad Gita explains, should be resisted, even if only mentally. Attachment and repulsion to sense objects, both of these are universally rooted. No one should accept their influence, for verily they are men's enemies. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Good morning. I'd like to read from Whispers from Eternity. These are mystical poems by Paramahansa Yogananda. This is Demand for Fervor in Divine Love. Teach me, O Spirit, to love Thee as wholeheartedly as a miser loves money. Make me attached to Thee as a drunkard is addicted to wine. Teach me to cling to Thee as erring ones do to their bad habits. Teach me to be as attentive to thee as a mother is to her child. Teach me to perform my duties diligently, with my attention fully riveted on thee. Teach me to love thee as the worldly man loves his possessions. With the first love of true lovers, teach me to love thee. All the great saints, they had tremendous respect for the devotee's free will. Yogananda really worked with people in really unique ways. Often he was very, very cryptic. And sometimes he would tell somebody something, and it was actually different than what he wanted them to do. And they were supposed to, through their own intuition, try to gain what that sense was. We have to learn through intuitive experience. Master, he called his religious work self-realization, because he wanted it to come from within, inside of people. Sri Yukteswar said that our understanding of a truth has to be understood not only in the mind, but through our whole being, and that's when we really know. And so Yogananda really worked at that with the disciples. There's a humorous story. When Swami was very new with Master, it was his first time he was ever alone with Master, except for when Master accepted him, and it was at 29 Palms. And Swami had learned the Om technique and how to practice it. And Master was sitting outside by the garage at his desert retreat there at 29 Palms. And Master asked Bernhard to go get something in the house. And Swami thought, aha, an opportunity with my guru. I can learn something, anything. And so but Master was very quiet, just sitting there. And so Swami, to break the ice, said, what does Om sound like? And Master, without looking at him, he just went, and then was quiet again. And Swami was uncomfortable in this quiet. And to further break the ice and probably sink himself further deeper into the lake, he said, well, how do you practice the technique? And without saying anything, this time, Master just went like this. And that was it. And, Swami didn't realize at the time that Master didn't allow people to talk. They were to be in silence, and that they were to commune with him inwardly and receive his blessings. Master was, as I said, very cryptic in the way he talked with people, and he would also allow things to play out so that people could learn from their own personal experience. And then that way, you have, it's more real, because you have this thought. There's so many times growing up here at Ananda with Swami, in my mind, I would be going somewhere, and Swami's just his stillness. He would just bring me right back, and I would kind of puzzle, where was I? What was I doing? I think we've all have had that experience. Well, Master would just allow people the freedom to just really find out where they were and what are the results. We had a very fun time years ago with Ananda High School, the boys. We went on a snow trip, and we were building snow caves, and Dwayne was one of the students. And before the trip, I told him that when you build your snow cave, to make your platform that you sleep on level. It was very important. Well, they were digging their snow caves, and they were so excited, and they were making their own adaptations with their snow cave, and they were excited to go out and go outside in the area. And I had told them again, make sure the platform's level. Well, they didn't listen to me, and I think it was after the third time I thought, well, I can't say anything more. And so I didn't say anything, and so everything was fine when the snow was soft, and their sleeping bags could stay on the platform in the snow cave. But after a while, it was maybe 20 degrees. It had frozen solid. It was like a slab of ice. and their platform was tilted towards the entrance of the snow cave. So all night long, they were trying to hold on to the edge of the snow cave, but then finally they'd go to sleep and they'd just slip right out and come out, and it was snowing outside, and they'd kind of be out of their sleeping bag on the snow, and they'd crawl back up and kind of hold on again, and then they'd slip right out again. And afterwards, I didn't have to tell them to make sure the platform is level. And we have to learn through personal experience. Otherwise, we don't really know. And then we're motivated once we can really see the ramifications of a certain kind of behavior. If everything is told to us, then we go, yeah, sort of like the high school students, and then we go on our merry way. But once we really learn, we really know. God is seeking us, as Master said, more than we're seeking Him. And as the reading, Truth Invites, I was thinking of all the different ways that God comes to us. I mean, we could list until the cows come home, but in some simple ways. We don't really see God so much. Sometimes we have, experiences the way that on the physical plane things come together. We see that all the time in the inner joy we feel, but God is the God of spirit, and He's working through our spirits. Just the mere chanting of Om, devotees have taken pictures of the auras, and the whole body is filled with light. And every time that we go to sleep at night, God takes away our physical body and says, you aren't a physical body and aren't ruled by physical limitations. You're the soul. And we have freedom from the body every night. I had just read yesterday, again, where Swami was talking about with the practice of Kriya, actually, he said, is working more on our astral bodies than our physical bodies, because we have currents that the energy rises and outside the spine, and it descends on an energetic level, and that causes the physical breath. Well, in the Kriya, we're equalizing those two currents and making them very still, and the energy goes unidirectionally up towards the spiritual eye. And so when Master said you can change your destiny through Kriya, he is talking about really changing a more subtle energy body that we have that influences all our physical experiences. And if you change that more subtle reality, you change your physical reality. Well, also, Swami said, this is what's very fascinating. He said that when the Guru comes to the disciple and gives them a divine blessing, his astral body enters into the devotee's astral body. And it's the Guru's magnetism that interacts with our astral being, and that's how we get spiritually magnetized. And the Guru is changing, enlivening our consciousness with his consciousness, but he's not dominating us in any way. He's just enlivening our own higher self at that time. And so there's so many different ways that God is coming to us all the time. And we just need to be more and more open to that. Master said that it's the great light of God that teaches the soul that when you're in that light, you understand and you master everything. And it's and how do we bring that light in? Didn't Christ say, when thy eye be single, the body will be full of light? And when that means the eye be single, it means that the energy is flowing through the spine up to the spiritual eye. The two eyes are the eyes of matter, of duality, but the eye of spirit is the single eye here. And so great saints have said, in an instant, you can learn truths that would take you decades or a whole lifetime to ponder. I had read when I was writing Deep Nature Play how Maria Montessori said that a young child can learn, I think it was in 3 years, what it'll take an adult 60 years to learn, because a child has that natural openness. And so they can learn. Well, just imagine, when when you're in super consciousness. I was always struck by when Swami said that Babaji's listening to these incredible symphonies that if he ever wrote them down and presented them to the world, people would be agog and amazed. But they're just passing through his consciousness all the time because God is ever new, joy, ever new inspiration. And that flood of inspiration is always passing through him. Well, every God-attuned soul, that is happening to them as well. God wants us to see creation the way that we see, the way he sees creation. Being spirit, he's not influenced by vibratory creation. He has created it to manifest all of us so that we can all feel his joy, and we have to have some independence in order to see ourselves in a distant relationship, and so that we can, Swami said that, the soul progresses through great effort. And there's a really interesting story about this Russian psychologist. He was talking about two Russian girls. One was 5 years old, the other was 7 years old. And these girls were sisters, and they played together sometimes. Sometimes they ignored each other. Sometimes they fought with each other, and as siblings will do. And they said with children, a lot of their actions are unconscious. They just sort of do things. Well, one day, the children decided that they are going to play at being sisters. And so they dressed alike, and they started to talk alike, and they moved alike, and they started putting conscious energy in being sisters. And they thought of what is the most ideal form of sisterhood there is, and then they tried to live that way. Well, it wasn't the fact that they were biological sisters that made them better sisters. It was that intentional action on their part. Well, we are all children of God, and we get out into Maya in delusion, and we sort of forget our origins, and we're a little bit unconscious. And the whole spiritual path is a way of just deepening your intention of what you want to achieve, what you want to attune to. And the more that you do that, the more you regain that sense of divinity that we have had all along. But it takes going through that whole drama and having that intention. Without it, we would just be a paramecium floating in the ocean and just drifting through life. The delusion is very, very strong. And Master said that God is the greatest magician. And because he makes what is unreal seem awfully real. And I had an experience of that. I had read this quotation in his Patanjali lessons, and it was a night where it was Master's Mahasamadhi, and I was supposed to be leading the ceremony with the McSweeneys and Anandi, but I was at home, and I had a really high fever, 103 fever, and I had the chills, and I had a sleeping bag and a down coat and insulated pants and stocking cap, and I was just shaking so much and so thrashing. And I remembered what Master had said about God being the greatest magician because he's making this seem awful real. And I just started laughing. It was just so riotous. And maybe our consciousness isn't always where we can just transcend delusion. Jochis said that only Swami is the one that, only one he really knew that could transcend things like that. But we can all accept it deeply, or we can all see through it, and we can laugh at it. And that's an incredible gift that we have, because we can stay removed from it, where it doesn't touch us. And there's, we have to, Master said, don't be fanatical, because you can't go past your level of realization with it, that this is just a dream, I don't have to pay any attention to it, because it's going to come back to hit us. But if we have that consciousness where we can make more subtle divine laws work, then we can ignore things. But it has to be a gradual process. There's an amusing story of a woman that was in a counseling session with a New Thought minister. And the minister kept saying, he didn't say honey, but he said, it's all in your mind. And it's just in your mind. And she got so frustrated that that's all that he said. And her problems are big problems and real problems. So she took off her shoe and she just hit him on top of the head. And he goes, why did you do that for? He said, what's your problem? It's just in your mind. But, I was thinking about, vibratory creation. Swami said that all vibration, for it to be centered and not helter-skelter going in different directions, it has to have a center. And that center, like Swami said with doing Hong Sa, at the very pause in Hong Sa lies the Christ consciousness. And lies that stillness. And if we can get to the heart of any reactive experience we have, regain our spiritual center, then what we can do is we can calm the vibratory creation. And Swami says that actually outer events start to adjust to our inner control when we find our spiritual center within. And it's only through that stillness that we see through delusion and that we aren't subject to delusion. Master said that when we tune into the Om vibration, the cosmic sound, that we aren't touched by anything in vibratory creation, and we can actually manipulate all vibratory creation. And so we just aren't touched by a lower reality because we're experiencing a higher and attuned to a higher reality. And so this is the way to really see through delusion is, every time our thoughts are God-centered, we're feeling that God is the doer, we're tuning to the Guru. When we go into the stillness of meditation, we're getting in touch with our spiritual center and away from the reactive process. And more, that comes into the devotee's life. And we've all experienced that, haven't we? Where we just aren't caught by things that we would have been before we came onto the path. And there's just this tremendous amount of freedom. And it just grows stronger and stronger and stronger in the devotee's life. Let's see. Yogananda, he said that love is it's the highest, most sublime principle in the universe. And there was a man who introduced Master to a London audience. He was a great devotee. He started the World Council of Faith and he just felt this incredible bliss all the time. He had an amazing experience in the Himalayas, and I'd like to read his words. It was after 15 months, he was the leader of an expedition, and as the leader, he had many responsibilities, and they were going to Lhasa. And one evening, he left camp alone, and the sun was slanting on the hillsides, and it was just a vibrant peace all around him. And this is what he said: I was free to relax. I was free to let my soul relax. I let it open itself out without restraint. In its sensitive state, it was receptive of the finest impressions. I had a curious sense of being literally in love with the world. I felt as if I could hardly contain myself for the love which was bursting within me. It seemed to me as if the world itself was nothing but love. Master said that all people, the whole world, the whole universe is attuned to this cosmic, eternal, harmonious love. And this is, I think, why Swami spoke so much about the importance of kindness. And he saw that that was his job, really, is to give people that love. You know, Master, and when he was talking about Christ and could have called down a host of angels to protect him, Master said, I too have that power, and I could call those angels as well, but I prefer working through love because of that power of that love, the way people respond to it, because their inner being resonates with it. And we know that, you know, whenever Swami would speak to us, most of us here remember many precious times, and maybe you've heard his talks, even if you didn't meet him in the body. But just that quality of love that was flowing through him, you knew that he had your highest interests at heart, that he was honoring that and sharing that and awakening that in you. And didn't we all, we just all become more open to him because of the way that he was and sharing that, any words that he spoke or any look that he gave. And this is just so important to have, you know, when St. Francis talked to the 3 robbers, they were terrorizing the district, and the district was up in arms, and they appeared at the monastery, and they needed help because the whole people, the villagers were all looking for them, and they wanted to find sanctuary, and the abbot that was in charge of that place drove them out and said, "How dare you be here?" And they went away cursing the abbot and God and everything else. And when Francis came, the abbot, just said, "Well, these sinful robbers came here, and I drove them away from this house of God." And instead of scolding the robbers, St. Francis scolded the abbot, didn't he? And he said, "You go take this food, and you look for those robbers, and you ask that Brother Francis wants to see them here." And when they came back, Francis talked to them and said, "You know, you don't enjoy living this way, the way that you do." And, you know, each of those brothers became saints. And it's because of that kindness that reached out, and they could resonate with that message. You know, as I was preparing for this service, I was thinking about how often we get impatient with other people. We want them to change, and they don't change. Jyotish was talking about how many of the world's problems are a result of us wanting other people to change, and people aren't willing to make that change we want them to make. And then I thought about, well, God, you know, he's a pretty patient fellow. You know, sometimes he's waited for 5 million lifetimes for a person to change enough to seek him. And as Master said, God says, "I will wait." Talk about patience. And what allows God to be so patient? It's because he knows that we're perfect right now, that we're a child of God now and forevermore, no matter what happens to us. And as I said earlier, he's not caught by his vibratory creation. And he knows that we aren't caught either. People think that, how could God permit this? Well, he knows on our deeper reality that we aren't touched by it. We are only learning by it. On Monday, I had a chance to visit my acupuncturist near Berkeley, and he's quite a prominent acupuncturist, and he's treats a lot of Buddhist lamas, and a lot of people go to train with him. And he was telling me a story about working with this woman lama who was passing, transitioning, and she had a lot of things going wrong with her body. And he was reading her pulse, and he was trying to help her in any way he could, relieving her suffering and making it easier. And there's a certain point just before she transitioned that she had a perfect health, representing perfect, it's just a perfect pulse. And, and that was her soul pulse that had been there all along, and that was sort of hidden behind all the different things that were happening to her body. And it's the same way with us as we go through life. We can be touched if we identify with the outer reality, but we can be free if we identify with our inner reality. And the more that we identify with the inner reality, the more patience we'll have for other people, the more compassion and understanding, and the more we'll be able to help them, because we'll be able to give them the kindness of love. And the more that we'll be able to help Master in touching them and awakening their hearts to God. Bless us all.
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed who thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, they shall be called the children of God. Blessed those reviled for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the